Hi, in this lecture you will learn how to use the update of event type in triggers. In previous lectures we learned how to use insert, update and delete events on triggers. But in the first lectures I had mentioned about one more event on triggers. It is update of event. Sometimes you do not care all the updates. You may want to run the trigger based on the update of some specific columns. You want your code to run with only update of that columns. Actually, in the previous lecture, I showed you how to do that with one way. Let's open up the before trigger then. As you can see, we can find out the update of a specific column. So we can write our business within an if clause and handle that problem. But this updating predicate is not for that issue. This is used if you want to make specific business for specific columns. However, sometimes you may want our trigger to fire on a collection of columns. If we want to do that with this way, we need to write multiple if statements. Besides, the main problem is this trigger will be fired for each update statement, whether the specified columns are updated or not. But this is not what I want, because this will decrease the performance since it will be fired unnecessarily for so many times. Besides, if statements are costly operations, so this will also decrease the performance. Instead of that, we can use update of event trigger and choose one or more columns. With this way, you can say to the server that fire that trigger only if these columns are updated. So you will prevent unnecessary execution of triggers. So let's create a new trigger for this to prevent the update of some columns. Let's write create or replace trigger and our trigger name prevent updates of constant columns before update of hire date on employees copy. As you can see, we simply write update of and the column name after it. Let's write for each row and our begin keyword and end. And let's write raise application error and minus, let's write something like that, and our message, you cannot modify the hire date. Now let's create it. Now we can test it. First, let's disable the others to avoid too many outputs. Great. Let's create another worksheet and write our update command. Update employees copy set hire date is equal to, let's say, sysdate. Now let's run it. As you can see, it prevented the update of the hire date. So now let's update another column and see if it will work anyway. Let's copy that and let's write salary is equal to, let's say, 1000. Let's clear up and run it. As you can see, our trigger did not run since the hire date column is not updated. So, can we write multiple columns for that trigger, or do we need to create a new one for each column? Of course we can. Now let's do it. The only thing that we need to do is writing other columns with separating them by comma signs. For example, let's write the salary column too. And now let's change our message to hire date and salary columns. As you can see, pretty simple. Now let's compile it. So now let's run the previous update command. As you can see, we could not update the salary column in this time. Our trigger prevented that update. But the other columns are still updatable. We saw how to prevent all in the previous lectures. This time you use update event type instead of the update of event type. Great. Now you know how to use the update of command. You use this when you want to do some business when an update occurs only if the specified columns. You can select one or more columns with this event type. Besides, you can use update of column and the updating predicate with the column names. So your trigger will both execute only when some update occurs in the specified columns, and inside of the trigger, you can do different actions with using the updating column predicate. But notice that you cannot use update of event and update event together. Otherwise, update of will not have any meaning, and the compiler will not let you to do that. I had mentioned about that before. Alright, this is the end of this lecture. See you in the next lectures.